A month ago, the International Olympic Committee announced its premier eSports event in Singapore in June this year. An announcement so underwhelming, I bet most of you watching this didn't even know about it. I only knew about it because archery is one of the sports in the program. So, as a gamer and an athlete, I was curious how they could capture my sport. I know a few gaming and commentary channels have already reacted to this, but if you're new to my channel, I'm someone who is a bit closer to the sport being featured. Not only do I coach archery in real life, but I've also actually collaborated with World Archery, and as a competitor, I am undoubtedly one of the athletes of all time. So I believe I am more than qualified to say that this is a joke. Yes, sadly, this is actually my gameplay footage. Enthralling. Look, esports is a thing and I appreciate it. I'm not going to get into the debate about whether esports are considered sports. They're not, but esports is a lucrative and competitive scene that draws millions of fans and millions of dollars. I'm not exactly a pro gamer, but I get the appeal. So why does the International Olympic Committee want a piece of something that they have never been involved with? And who wanted it? Let's examine all the sports and games selected for this event, starting with archery. Spotlighting the mobile game Tic Tac Bow. I was going to dedicate a fair bit of time to this segment, but there's honestly not much to say. If you've ever played a mobile archery game, this is pretty much the same generic shovelware game, except it plays off the tic-tac-toe kids game, the one you do in class to pass time. Like with literally every archery mobile game, you play with an AI opponent that usually tries to lose for you. You get loot boxes that take several hours to unlock, upgrade your bow, and basically pay to win. Later stages, as you probably guessed, involve wind and moving targets. Wow. There are so many things wrong with this. Firstly, the game itself doesn't even look that good, and hardly anyone has heard of it, let alone plays it. Secondly, tic-tac-toe is not a competitive event. If both players know the optimal moves, the best result is always going to be a draw. Tic-tac-bow does introduce a slight competitive aspect by enabling the player to take over a square if they score higher, but it's not exactly nail-biting competitive excitement, and most of the time you're going to win based on conventional rules, unless the AI is dumb. Now, speaking of which, thirdly, it's hardly competitive when it's a single-player game. Let's not kid ourselves. We know the matchmaking is with an AI opponent. You're not actually facing someone live. And finally, the Olympic qualifying event in-game is a stupid pop as many bubbles as you can for a high score. This isn't even the competitive format for this alleged esport. I was going to make suggestions on how to actually make this interesting, but this clearly is a joke that no one is taking seriously. Heck, the real life version of this is actually a lot of fun because hitting the target is an achievement in itself, but this mobile game requires no skill and no strategy. Yet this is supposedly the official game for my sport. A game that virtually no one in the sport plays. This is an embarrassment. Let's take a look at the others. Baseball has eBaseball Power Pros. Now this is a Konami game released on the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. The series has only been released in Japan prior to this specific game, and the only qualifiers so far have been held in Japan. Virtually no one outside of Japan plays this game, and with it only being released a couple of months ago in Japan, there's no international competitive scene. Chess has, chess on chess.com. Now chess is the most popular non-athletic game in the world, and I don't have a problem with chess. But I've got questions. Firstly, chess is not only not a sport, it's not even an e-sport. So why is it in an esports tournament? Secondly, the International Chess Federation and chess.com run their own more prestigious events, like the Chess Olympiad. Why fly under the Olympic banner in an esports event? Now for cycling, we have Zwift, which involves cycling on an actual bicycle at home. Now this seems to be the most legitimate implementation of a sport, and I was honestly expecting a controller-based bicycle sim like Tour de France. Not only do you actually physically do the activity, there's legitimate world championships being held. The people involved are big names in the Zwift community, and the production of these live events looks legitimate. For dance, we've got Just Dance. Well, that's kind of weird because dance sport isn't in the Olympic program. As for the game, most people consider Just Dance to be a casual party game, and I wasn't sure if there was a competitive scene. Apparently there is. I don't think there's an actual eSports scene though, because this kind of looks like Ubisoft hyping up super fans rather than tapping into a professional scene. For motorsport, well, we've got a similar problem because like chess and dance sport, it's kind of weird to include motor racing because it's not a sport in the Olympic program. Now, racing sims do have a massive community and competitive scene, both official and unofficial events across different formats. The choice of Gran Turismo is interesting. It is a well-known series which does have a competitive scene, but it's not really the most widely played. Kind of weird to go with this particular one. Sailing has Virtual Regatta. It's a mobile game. Taekwondo has Virtual Taekwondo. Now this is interesting because it's a fighting game, but it uses motion sensing technology. So it's a motion sensing fighting game. There are health bars, there are character models, and it's a 3D virtual environment, but you actually have to do real techniques. I was quite skeptical because while it looks pretty good, it doesn't have the appeal of contact sports, because half the thing with a combat sport is making contact with the opponent. Now you're just whirling around in empty space and apparently you're getting hit or you're hitting someone. Now when you have things like input delay, lack of feedback, the entire flow and timing is going to be way off. So I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. And finally, we've got tennis, and it's a mobile game. I want to point out that as of this recording, April 17th, half the alleged esports don't have any qualifying information on the official website. So there's no way to qualify for half these events. In fact, some of these events you can't even play. Like, how do you get into virtual taekwondo? No information, 2 months away, and apparently it's happening. It's mind-boggling how big the spread is in the quality and relevance of the games. If I had to rank the games, I'd put the cycling event with Zwift at the very top because it's the closest blend of the real sport and a virtual environment that makes the most sense. Real cycling races require lots of organization and real-world locations that can be hard to get to. So it combines the physicality with the virtual game world. I mean, to actually be good at virtual cycling or Zwift, you've got to train as a cyclist, and the app actually encourages and records that. At the very bottom, we've got Archery and Tic Tac Bow, because it doesn't even simulate the sport that it represents. Plus the game itself had less than 100 downloads at the time of the announcement, and now it's like a couple thousand or something, but it's hardly a well-known game. Nobody plays this. Now, allegedly, the inclusion of Tic Tac Bow, which is to be fair, it's a rushed mobile game. It's got microtransactions, it's shovelware. Apparently, it's because its dev, Project 99, is literally the same company as Refract, which is the developer behind Virtual Taekwondo, and allegedly, one of the devs is also a board member of the Singapore eSports Association, which is hosting the event in Singapore where the Olympic eSports event is taking place. So it's nice to know that the sport that I am doing is literally shovelware packaged as part of a different virtual sport. Now, even if this isn't true and it's not accurate, it's still blatantly obvious that this game was not chosen in the interest of representing the sport. And by the way, the game has already been exploited and the leaderboards are obviously hacked. So, here are my thoughts about this whole thing. It is important to clarify that this does not mean that esports is in the Olympic Games. It's an eSports event that is organized by the International Olympic Committee, so it has nothing to do with the Olympic Games. You won't see the eSports in Paris 2024. It just has Olympic branding, but in the eyes of viewers and spectators, it's the same thing. And there are so many things wrong with this. 1. This is not eSports. I doubt the Olympic Committee will consider including actual esports in the program like League of Legends or Counter-Strike, but you can't take random mobile games and say, "Yup, you are now the official game of World Archery. You're an esport now." 2. You can't artificially create an esports scene. Existing esports have massive communities built over many years. Even if you sponsor events and dump money into world championships, you're not encouraging a competitive environment where the best go against each other. It doesn't help that certain games have very limited audiences, such as e-baseball being almost exclusively played in Japan. 3. The thrill of esports is in the twists and turns that a spectator expects. You never really know what to expect in any moment in a game, and it's an adrenaline rush for the player and the fan. Big esports stars are celebrities who live in the moment and experience the emotional highs and lows. These players look like they're falling asleep. 4. Who is this event actually for? It's definitely not the fans of the sport because they don't know about these games and don't play them, let alone watch someone else play them. They're not geared towards the athletes who are doing the actual sport rather than the virtual version, which nobody plays. There's no endorsements from athletes, and if they are, you can bet that any official endorsement is a contractual obligation. But even comparing the sports, you have the cycling event that may as well be run by actual competitive cyclists versus PlayStation games and casual mobile games. 5. Nobody wants this. Gamers don't care about the Olympic branding because their own events are better. The Olympic Committee should not try to incorporate esports into a brand that is perpetually associated with physical sport. The IOC is clearly not tapping into the esports community because they've gone out of their way to pick the least representative games. I feel so awfully mixed about this. At best, it's a misguided attempt for the Olympic brand to look cool to young people. At worst, it's Olympic levels of corruption. There is no sensible reason why the Olympic brand is being given to both Gran Turismo, the less popular game in a discipline that is not even considered a sport, and a derivative mobile game released barely weeks ago. Nobody is promoting this event. Nobody in the sport cares about this event. Nobody outside the sport cares about the event. It is a joke. If the IOC seriously wanted to tap into esports, you already have massive competitive communities for games like FIFA, the single most popular game for the most popular sport in the whole world with an already established esports community, not some Switch baseball game that's only played in Japan. It is so out of touch to see Olympic officials and sport representatives act like this one game that was put in front of them is the best thing ever. It's a sham. It devalues the Olympic brand and makes a mockery of the sports who have been selected. It's an embarrassment to read these official statements from citing the future of the sport. You may as well have an Olympic Wii Sports event in Paris. What a way to ruin both sport and esport. I can't wait to see the finalists for Tic Tac Bow, supposedly the best players in the world, who are hackers from Malaysia sitting awkwardly in a room fidgeting with their phones. What are your thoughts? Post below while I grind out Tic Tac Bow and come up with archery puns that miss the mark. If you're new to my channel and you want to see more about how archery looks in real life, check out my videos and my channel and perhaps even give it a shot.